Department of Philosophy, Noyagara Autonomous College, Noyagara, Odisha. And Professor Pramod Kumar is a very familiar to philosophy family. He is the admin of philosophy family. He is the convener of philosophy family, and he has he has the skill of connecting the intellectuals and lauded philosophers of this country and abroad. Professor Das has a teaching experience of more than 28 years in different government-aided colleges of Odisha. He has deliberated more than 100 talks in philosophy family. He has deliberated more than 100 talks in the Wisdom Intellectual Forum Puri. Being the president of Chinmay Mission Puri, he has deliberated many lectures that I have not tried to count all the lectures. Professor Das has shown his excellency in Western philosophy and Indian philosophy. And if you attend the webinars, in shorter webinars, you can see how clearly Professor Das is presenting his talks on Western philosophy, and all the talks are very clear. And because of his deep understanding on Western philosophy, he's a brilliant scholar, and who can provide justice to the audience of different languages. Being a very experienced organizer, he has already conducted more than 300 seminars and webinars, both in online and offline. They are state level seminars, national level seminars, and international seminars. Professor Das had also been invited to different states for delivering his talk, and particularly during the Corona, Professor Das has been connected to different colleges across the country to deliver his talks on different philosophical issues. Professor Das, being the admin of philosophy family, has taken all kinds of strains to connect the people, to organize the webinar, and to select the topics, and for editing the journal of philosophy family, and many more things that he's doing. It's not possible to speak in few languages within a short speech. So with this, I welcome Professor Pramod Kumar to the second session. Today, he has a very beautiful topic, the language of philosophy and philosophy of language. He can beautifully connect both the concepts, that language of philosophy and philosophy of language. So with this, I request Professor Pramod Kumar to present his talk. Over to Professor Das.
Namaskar. Namaskar to all of you. Dr. Kailash Chandra Mahana sir, very esteemed Dr. K.M. Narayana sir, esteemed Santosh Kumar Pal sir, who is present today. This is our fortune, this is our honor. We solicit his presence, because the presence of good souls inspires, that is meaningful. Esteemed Dr. Ranjit Ghosh sir and all other participants. At the outset, I appreciate the first talk of the first speaker. It was wonderful. The presentation was very clear, lucid, and was also informative. He very clearly and elaborately explained the task of a philosopher. And also he defined what is philosophy. So after listening to him, I am now confused that my contents are consumed by him. So what shall I speak? Many things what I had to say, that is said by Professor Shukla, that that proves that thoughts harmonize. Thoughts are equal. Two speakers are there. They have no contact. They have no prior preparation about this topic. But in course of deliberation, we find, or personally I find now, that my thoughts are matching with the thoughts of another speaker. Another speaker means another person from different land, person from different culture, different ideology, different personality, because everybody is distinct. So this is philosophy, that it is not a distinct, rather it is a discipline of thought. So what philosophy is, I shall say that what we realize is philosophy. What we think is philosophy. What we speak is philosophy. Speak or write. The great seers of Indian land, they were not speaking. They were not writing. They were speaking when there was a necessity to speak. If they don't feel to speak, they don't speak. So speaking is not necessary. The realization is philosophy. Realization of truth. That is called darsana. Darsana means to see the truth. I realized the truth. I realized that I am Brahman, not this person. This person, this name, form, my identity, so social identity, these are forms, these are changing. But if I shall speak that I am Brahman, it will not be understood by others because they don't have that realization. So if you try to translate philosophy in a language, then we have to make many compromises. Therefore, Immanuel Kant said, true philosophy or reality cannot be presented through logic, cannot be presented through the categories of understanding. Because whatever we understand through a mind, that is through the format of mind. Every philosopher has his own ideology and methodology. If Buddha is speaking, Buddha has his own format. If Shankaracharya is speaking, Shankaracharya has his own format. Therefore, Jaina system said, Anekantavada, that means one view is impossible. Ekantavada is impossible. Ekantavada is an illusion because if you mistake the Ekantavada as the complete Vada, complete view, it is a fallacy. Aneka Vadas are there, many views are there because many minds are there, many types of thinking are there. And man can think, animals don't think. So philosophy is a human possibility. So philosophy is not that which is expressed in language. This is a very big misconception. I surprise, I wonder, and feel very sorry when many philosophers claim that philosophy is only linguistic analysis, philosophy is only critical analysis, philosophy is analysis, philosophy is only linguistic analysis. So don't confine philosophy to a particular discipline, because man can realize, man can think, and man can speak, man can write. So only speaking and writing is not philosophy. What you speak, that is philosophy, but that is a part of philosophy. That is not the total philosophy. Philosophy is a very wider concept. I realize and I don't want to share my realization. That does not mean I am not a philosopher. So what we realize is philosophy, what we think is philosophy, and what we speak, that is philosophy. What we realize, we can say that the method is intuitive method. That may not be translated in logic and language. Intuitively, I know many things. When I think, I use logic, because without logic, I can't think. There are three laws of thought: law of identity, law of contradiction, law of exclusivity. Without these application of laws, I can't have a valid thinking. Basic understanding is that I know these three laws of thought, therefore I can think. So my thought is logical. So when realization is forced to be expressed in the form of a thought, it loses its dignity, because thought is binary. Thought is logical binary, that is dialectic. There are two opposite possibilities. If we affirm something, automatically its opposite will be negated. So the point is, the realization cannot be translated in our thoughts. Similarly, whatever we think, that cannot be exactly translated in language. So if we are engaged in only linguistic analysis, then we have no scope for better thinking and realizing the truth. So the topic is language of philosophy. So when we are going to discuss language of philosophy, here we are discussing about speaking philosophy. Here we are speaking about the philosophy that can be communicated, the philosophy that can be taught, the philosophy that can be shared with others. And for sharing, for any communication, we need language. Without language, I can't communicate my philosophy, my thought to others. So when we are taking the help of language and we say that this is the language of philosophy, I shall say what is the language of philosophy, but we have to understand that when we are relating language with philosophy, we have to be very much clear that through language we are not defining the philosophy as such, because there are other two possibilities: realization of truth and thinking about truth. I think, but I don't want to speak. If I don't speak, it is not communicated. Many great seers, they think, but they don't share. And we can't share many thoughts. We decide to, we are very selective. We think many absurd things. That is privacy. That is private. Thought is always private. But we can't express all thoughts because we are gentle persons. So, speech is scrutinized, is selected. All thoughts are not expressed through language, and we don't want to express all thoughts. We express on very selective thoughts in the form of language. So when we are speaking about the language of philosophy, we are speaking about a very limited field of philosophy. Because beyond the use of language, there is a great dimension of a philosophy, that is thinking philosophy and realizing philosophy. Realization is philosophy, thinking may be absurd. My thought may not match with others' thought, but whatever I am thinking is my philosophy. Because today I am thinking, tomorrow I shall speak. Whatever we are speaking today, that is our past memory, that is our past thought. That is nothing but the consequence of our thought exercise. We have thought over a concept so many times, and when we find an occasion, we speak that. So thought is prior to speaking. So when we are discussing about philosophy through the medium of language, we should understand, so we are compromising with the truth. Because the truth cannot be expressed through logic and language. It is said by both Indian and Western philosophers. Immanuel Kant is the best example. And in Indian culture, many great philosophers like Shankaracharya, they have admitted that because that beyond the language, because language is a human creation, it is a human convention. We have created language and we have given meaning to them. The dictionary is our creation. Tomorrow we can change the dictionary. So this is all about our convention. This is our creation. Similarly, the philosophy that is based upon our linguistic analysis, that is our creation. But beyond human creation, there is philosophy, which cannot be captured by our thought and expressed by our language. So now we shall not discuss about philosophy as realization, philosophy as thinking. We shall discuss philosophy that is expressed in language. My humble submission to all the students of philosophy and faculties of philosophy, when we are using language in philosophy, we should be very much careful. Dr. Shukla also pointed that very nicely. I was listening to him very sincerely, very seriously. He was discussing that the language of philosophy is different from language of other sciences. So very simple, the basic difference between the language of philosophy and language of not philosophy, or the language of other disciplines, we can say that the language of other disciplines is descriptive by nature. Science describes. It may be social science, it may be applied science. Science describes the facts. But philosophy is not descriptive by nature. Therefore, whenever we write an article or a PhD thesis, or we deliver a talk, we are not engaged in describing the facts, because that is the job of the literature. That is the job of other disciplines. They are there to describe the facts. They describe and they explain. In philosophy, our language is implicative by nature. What you say in the first sentence, that should imply the second sentence. Again, that should imply the third sentence. That means, suppose you are writing 10 sentences in one paragraph. All these 10 sentences should have an implicative relation. Otherwise, it is not philosophy. It is literature. It is history. It is science. If you are really serious about the language of philosophy, you should know that you are not going to describe anything. Don't describe anything. There should be an intention. What I am saying, Dr. Shukla sir also said about the intention of the philosopher. What do you intend to say? And your intention is the thread that connects the entire speech or the entire draft. Whatever you write, whatever you speak, that should imply, that must be an implication, like a deduction. The conclusion should follow from the premise. Otherwise, it is not a deduction. If the premises are not related to the conclusion, then it is not a deduction. So, philosophy is deductive by nature. One sentence follows the another sentence, and that is a logical connection. So far as the logical connection is concerned, we shall say, therefore, our department is known as logic and philosophy. Our philosophy is not a separate discipline without logic. Because why the department is called logic and philosophy? Because when philosophy is needed to be expressed and through language, without logic we cannot express that. So the language of logic, language of philosophy is logic. That means it is logical. It is a logical language. This is very, very important. The language we use in philosophy, that is logical. Logical means there is an implication. One expression implies another expression. If the implication is lacking, then you are not speaking philosophically. That means you don't have any intention to speak. You have nothing to speak. You are speaking for the sake of speaking. Like other general speakers. When a philosopher is speaking, his speech is different because his speech is logical. The conclusion follows from the premises. If this is the method, if this is the language of philosophy, then what is the goal? The goal is clarity. Because without logic, we can't have clarity in conceptualization. Because if we try to understand philosophy through language, because there are other disciplines, we can understand philosophy through thinking, and our realization is also philosophy. But when we are discussing about that philosophy which is expressed through language, so that language should be very much clear language. As Shukla sir said, that was also my intention to speak. That is unambiguous language. That means language of philosophy should not have double meaning, should not be ambiguous. It should be clear. One is it must be implicative, logical. The second one is it must be clear, unambiguous. The third one is it must be definite. It cannot be indefinite. Pinpointed. Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, pinpointed. From one aphorism you can write volumes. Tathata Brahma Jigyasa. This is very small expression. You can write volumes. That means whatever we speak, it must have logical content. Logical content means there must be a connecting thread in every expression. Otherwise, it is not a philosophical language. So when somebody is speaking philosophy, what he is speaking is not important. How he is speaking is important. If he does not know how to speak philosophy, then what he is speaking is useless. So when we are teaching philosophy or we are discussing philosophy, we should know how to speak, what type of language I should use. It is not necessary. Many philosophers, those who have good knowledge in English language or they have better vocabulary sense, they think because we are literally sound, we can express philosophy. No, not at all. More vocabulary you know that may not help philosophical expression. But minimum vocabulary you know, but you know how to use this vocabulary. What is your intention? Your intention is to maintain the thread, whether your conclusion follows from your premises. Whatever you assume or whatever you speculate or whatever is your hypothesis, that may be a hypothesis, but you have to justify it. Professor Shukla also said that. We have to justify our claim. So we can't justify our claim without logical language. So far as we believe in the expression of a thought is philosophy. The expression of a thought means that thought is expressed through our language. So philosophy is expressed in language. When we are doing that, we must use the definite language. I made a complaint to our principal, sir. This is a fact. Before 2 days, we were conducting our examination. One question set I found, that is the Descartes' meditation, and there is 1 mark of 12 questions having 1 mark each. So the students will attend 12 questions for 12 marks. If 1 question is missed, they will lose 1 mark. What I found, the question setter, and I made a complaint that it is substandard question. I write to the principal that this is the substandard question, and being an autonomous college, substandard question setters should not be entertained. So what is the substandard question? When we are making a fill of the blank, if we are giving, that should be very much definite. That means 1 word should be missed there, which should be very much definite. If that implies so many answers, it is indefinite. So how can a student attend that question? And if suppose the human knowledge is dash, this is a question. Human knowledge is dash in Descartes' philosophy. One student will write, human knowledge is certain. Other student will write, human knowledge is self-evident. Human knowledge is rational. I am answering it from the perspective of the students. Students are there in the examination hall. This is an indefinite question expressed in indefinite language. It invites so many answers. Human knowledge is just certain, correct, self-evident, correct, rational, correct, or so many answers can be given because this question is not definite. Imaginations produce dash. This is also like that type of a question. And 32 marks I found out of 80 that they are of this type of language. That means the question setter has no knowledge about the language of philosophy. So when we are questioning, that is expressed in language. So that question is not should not be indefinite. So another characteristics of a language of philosophy is that should be very much definite. That means what I am saying definitely, as Professor Shukla said, the relation between word and thing. If I am uttering an word, that must refer to the thing definitely. Definite word should be referred. If it refers to the indefinite objects, then the philosopher, that is not the task of the philosopher. Because our expression should be definite. So, language must be logical. There must be a logical thread in our expression. Language should be very simple. Ornament language is not necessary in philosophy. Language should be very simple. Language should be definite. Language should be unambiguous. Language should not be obscure. Unnecessary sentences, unnecessary statements should not be there. Here one question will come. Can't philosophers speak any story when they are delivering a talk? Can't philosophers speak about science or any description? Is language of a philosophy always logical? Whether it is not descriptive at any point of time? Here comes the answer that if you know this technique, that I mean what I say, that I am very much aware of the thread of my thought, thread of my expression, with this tool, you can speak of a story, you can speak of science, you can speak of arts, you can speak of commerce. Therefore, philosophy is connected with every science, every discipline. Because if you know the art of speaking, and if you are aware of the thread, then you can put one story, but you don't miss the thread. You can speak about science, but your intention should be that what I mean to say. So you can speak about science as an example. You can speak about history as an example. You can speak about social sciences as example in the course of your speech, but you should not be carried away by that. You should not be out of the track. Your intention is that you are a philosopher. You are taking the help of literature, you are taking the help of history, you are taking the help of science in order to explain your intention. Not that you are confusing the audience by giving some beautiful stories that becomes again descriptive. The philosopher does not describe. For description, there are other persons. They will describe. So whatever is described by other faculty members, that is explained by philosophers. Whatever is described by science, whatever is described by other disciplines, that is explained by philosophers. So a philosopher is not one who studies philosophy or who is a philosophy professor. A scientist is also a philosopher when he is trying to explain what he is describing. So every man is a philosopher in that sense. Therefore, in our higher degrees, there is a philosophy, because if you are doing MPhil, it is called the philosophy, master in philosophy, master of arts in philosophy. If you are doing PhD, that is the philosophy. The highest certificate is philosophy, because in philosophy we can discuss all disciplines. That means if we are engaged in only description, then that is not philosophy. If there is an explanation of description, if we try to justify if you have a claim and you try to justify your claim, and for justifying your claim, you are taking many examples from literature, history, or theology. That may be, but your philosophical thread should not be missed. If you are really a philosopher, that was the Socratic method. So what Socrates was doing? Socrates was asking question. So by asking question, he became very humble. That I am asking the question means I don't know anything. The wisest person. Socrates is called the wisest person. But when he was asking question, he was feeling that he does not know anything. I don't know. I am asking this question to you. So by asking the question, he was meaning what he was asking. So that asking the question is not dogmatic by nature, it is logical by nature. So by asking the question to different persons and receiving different type of answers, in the dialectical process, he was getting the final truths. And in philosophy, there is no final discussion, there is no final conclusion. Philosophy is a process of thinking. So no language can stop philosophical expression. Language is simply a vehicle. And it is very difficult to express the exact thought of yours. You are trying to express. Nobody can express his finest thought through any finest language. It is impossible. Whatever we are reading the scripts about Shankaracharya's philosophy, that is not the philosophy of Shankaracharya. That is that which is expressed through language. We manage with that because that is the tool, that is the limitation. Therefore, the realization of Shankar's philosophy, the person who is realizing Shankar's philosophy and the person who is reading Shankar's philosophy through language is different. Suppose I am an Advaitin. Suppose I have realized what is non-dualism, and suppose there is another scholar who is well versed in Shankar's philosophy and who can deliver hundreds of talks about Shankar's philosophy. It's quite different. The person who has realized non-dualism, that will be reflected in his social behavior. He can really see everything in him and him in everything. But that is impossible in the linguistic analysis. Many great scholars, they have tried to express Shankar's philosophy through language. That it can be, it is also possible by linguistic analysis. That may be an attempt because expressing the truth through language is an human attempt. So we can have many types of attempts, but we can't realize that truth through the language. But so far as the language of philosophy is concerned, we should keep in our mind that we are very much careful about the language that we are using for philosophy, that it is not descriptive, it is implicative by nature. What I am saying, suppose now I am saying for 20 minutes or 20 minutes, every sentence implies the second sentence. Otherwise, we can't have a concept. We can't have any conceptualization. We can't synthesize the speech of a speaker if they are not connected. So that is philosophy, and that is not by a philosopher. A philosopher means academic philosopher or a university professor. This is the general attitude. Philosophy is the general attitude. So every scientist is a philosopher. They are, in that sense, philosophy is the second order of activity. Because this second order is an universal order. It is there in every man, every discipline. Therefore, the highest degree is philosophy. The deep study in any discipline is philosophy. Number one. Number second, I shall say, if we are talking about the language of philosophy, who is using that language? A person. A person is using that language. So language is not expressed by itself. It is expressed by a person. And it is expressed to a person. So that is a dialogue between two persons. So here two persons are engaged in any type of communication. So the person who is using language, his personality should be like that. His personality should be like a philosopher. What is that? Suppose that means I mean to say philosophy is not argument. Suppose two persons are exchanging their thoughts and they are in a competitive mood that I shall win this argument. This is not philosophy. So the intention of the speaker who is involved in a rational argument, if it is really rational, then the intention, the personality, the intention defines the personality. What is the intention? That I am not using language only to win in argument. I am using language to learn from you. This should be the intention of the person who is using language in philosophy. In philosophy, the speaker should be very much humble. If now I am speaking, I should be open to everybody, that this can be challenged. Many questions will come. I don't stick to my thought, my expression. It is open to all. If I close the door for discussion, then that is argument. That means I superimpose my thought upon others. So when I am using language, and as it is impossible to express my entire thought through language, so I should have humbleness. That I am sorry, whatever I think, whatever I realize, I am sorry to express that through a very poor instrument, that is language. So many things I may not have expressed, so please excuse me. So this is the personality of a philosopher. If we are so much stubborn, when we are egoistic by nature, that I want to win the argument, then that is it is useless. It has no purpose. So language should be like this. I very briefly I said that language should be unambiguous, language should be very much clear, language should be logical, language should be simple, and there should be an implicative thread. There should be a harmony, and there should be an intention of the speaker, and that speaker should be a gentleman. Who is a gentleman? Who really wants to know something, who really wants to speak something, and what he speaks, he means it. That is, and this is very beautifully said in Jaina system. Respect all perspectives. Respect all views. This is your view. Yes, your view is correct from your perspective. My view is correct from my perspective. We should have tolerance. Tolerance is another feature. We should tolerate. We should have tolerance. We should have patience, because we have a very poor instrument of language through which we can't deal with philosophy. Therefore, we should have tolerance. The poor speaker is trying to speak philosophy through language, so he is helpless. I am a poor speaker. I am trying to speak through language. I am helpless. Therefore, we should cooperate each other. Oh, what is humbleness? The opposite party will say No, he knows the truth, but what happens in the classroom? Many students know the answer, but they don't. They fail to express it because they don't find appropriate word. So if there is a language instrument, then the talent is the how far you are expert in using that language. Therefore, Wittgenstein said the only method of solving the metaphysical problems that you should know how to use language. If we are discussing about religion, then the religious language has its own function. Every game has its own rule. So don't confuse with religious language with the language of science. Don't confuse the mystical language to the language of science. When we are going to temple, we are having prayers. It is a language. It is a different type of language. It is meaningful, significant in that situation. In my family, I have my personal language. How I talk with my wife, I don't talk with my daughter. So every situation has its own function of language. Don't mismatch. So if you are talking about science, you should be very much aware what type of language is necessary to speak about science. If you are talking about religion, you should be aware of the nature of language that can suit religious expression. Similarly, when we are discussing about philosophy, our language should be logical. This is language of philosophy. It is a very vast topic. There are many things to say, but I have the another topic, that is what is philosophy of language. When we discuss about what is philosophy of language, philosophy of language is the understanding about the limit of language. This is the nature of language. That is language of philosophy. What should be the language of philosophy? We discussed. But philosophy of language will clarify what is the limit of my language. That is the philosophy. You see, we are using language to accommodate all philosophical thoughts. This is an illusion, according to Immanuel Kant. That if beyond your categories of understanding and sensibility, if you are using your reason for describing anything unconditioned, that is simply the illusion. That is the transcendental dialectic. That means the logic of the illusion. Because your mind is roaming according to its own choice. That means it is not through the sensibility and understanding. In that way, you have free access. You can do that, but that is not the reality. That is not knowledge. There is no knowledge claim. So, philosophy of language means, even if we are taking the credit of language, even if we know that language is the only tool, only instrument for communication, at the same time, if we are really a philosopher, we should know what is the limit of language. How far we can go through the help of language. If we understand that, then that is philosophy of language. That means we know what is the limit of language and what is the possibility of language. How far I can go through the help of language, even through the help of logic. Immanuel Kant said, through the help of logic, through the help of sensibility and understanding, we can reach only the phenomenal world. The noumena, the unconditioned, cannot be categorized, cannot be known through our any human format. That may be language, that may be thinking, that may be sensibility, perception. through that format, you can only know the phenomenal world. That means appearance. What appears to us. So here comes the question between truth and appearance. So whatever is true, that cannot be expressed in language, and if we try to express, that is inadequate, and that even that cannot be thought of because our thought is limited. Whatever we think today as correct, we reject that thought. No other critique is necessary. We reject that thought. In my childhood, I was thinking that the doll is true. And I was crying when I was detached from that doll, or if the doll is taken away by anybody else. I thought that doll is true. But when I became grown up, I thought that no, this is a doll. I am now smiling, I am now laughing. How fool I was. Similarly, in the waking state, whatever we think to be true, whatever we suppose in the dream state, whatever we think to be true, that becomes false in the waking state. And in the waking state, we say, in the Jagrata state, we say, now I am far better than the dream states. So now whatever I am perceiving, that is true. This is another mistake. The dream is false. The waking state is also false. The dreamless sleep is also false. Because I am that pure consciousness. I am in the state of Turiya. So the higher knowledge will dismiss the lower knowledge. So if this is so, if our experience has its limit, the whole life is spent in the waking, so-called waking state. Actually, we are not waking. We are not waking state in the waking state. In the waking state also, we are ignorant of the reality. So whatever we think to be true in the waking state, that is also about appearance. That means I am that pure consciousness. I mistake myself as in the state of Jagrata or Supna or Susupti. I am that formless, but I mistake myself with different forms. That I am father, I am husband, I am a teacher. These are the different forms. They have practical utility. They have practical relevance. Practically, these things are correct. But beyond these forms, I am that formless. This is only possible through realization. Therefore, language can't accommodate the reality, the truth. Therefore, Shankara said, neti, 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 not this, not this, not this, not this. At least you can describe something negatively. You can't give a positive description about anything. Because you can't make a full stop to any description. So better you deny, not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. That means language is inadequate to describe the reality. Therefore, the reality is indescribable. That means the truth is indescribable. But that indescribable truth, which cannot be described by language, can be realized by ourselves. Therefore, we are different persons having different personalities. My level of realization is different from the other person. Similarly, the realization of Vivekananda was also a person, was a man. His realization is different from a common man. So there are different men, the different persons having different levels of realization. Therefore, Sri Aurobindo spoke about different levels of consciousness in the name of different minds. That the higher mind, over mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, super mind. Last is Sachidananda. There are different levels of mind. So our perception of the world, what we perceive, that is determined by our level of consciousness. If I am in the level of Jagrata, I shall claim that whatever we see in the Jagrata state, that is real. As I was thinking that whatever I am dreaming, that was real. But if I am in the state of Turiya, then I shall see, oh, whatever I am perceiving this Jagrata, that is practically true, practically necessary, but it is not the truth. I am just playing different roles as per my social obligation, social duty, but this is not my real identity. So philosophy of language is a second order activity of discussing the nature and scope of language. What is the nature of language and what is the scope of language? What is the reach of language? How far language can help us? This is discussed by philosophy of language, that one should be aware of the language, that it is only an instrument. So philosophy of language will discuss the use and misuse of language. So Wittgenstein very clearly explained the use and misuse of language. Philosophy of language will help us to know that there is the truth, there is something which is beyond linguistic analysis. This is philosophy of language, according to my understanding, because language is very much necessary, that we discussed in the language of philosophy, but that is not enough. Philosophy of language suggests that you should know the limit, the capacity of language. If you really know that, then you shall have an access for the truth, for the realization. You can transcend language and land in your thought, and you can transcend your thought and you will land in realization. Thank you. We shall have discussion after that. So I really appreciate the talk of Professor Prashant Shukla sir. Very beautifully he explained his content, and I said what I thought that it should be spoken. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Professor Pramod Kumar Das, for your conceptual clarity on the language of philosophy and philosophy of language. Having a matching of thought with Professor Shukla, you have affirmed that conceptual clarity, the aim of philosophy, that you are intending to focus. And you said without logical language, we cannot express our thought. And the logical positivist and philosophers like Professor Ganesh Mishra Purisa have taken the tool of logical linguistic analysis for any kind of clarity in philosophy. And by it, he has tried, Professor Ganesh Mishra has tried to solve any kind of ambiguities in the Indian philosophy and Western philosophy. And while discussing the language of logic, you have put your own observation that philosophy of language helps us to know what is beyond language, what is not possible in language, that is in a different kind of analysis. You have shown your excellency, and you have put an observation that language of philosophy is also helpful, that is in doing another kind of philosophical reflection. With this, I request Professor Dr. K. Omnar Rao to carry on the interactive session. Over to Dr. Rao. Over to Dr. Rao.
Yes. Namaskar. Thank you for their lectures, and both the talks were really interesting. And the beauty being that the second speaker tried to connect what the first speaker has tried to well, I should invite people. Will during the course of the discussion, I can have my own viewpoint on both the talks. Well, Professor Ranjit Ghosh sir is with us. I welcome you, sir. Sir, you have some observations to make. Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Both the lectures were very nice for us in finding out a solution. So, as far as I have understood, he has given importance to the language of philosophy more than the philosophy of language. Now, regarding Prashant Sukla's speech, I should say that he was trying to ascertain the task of philosophy. Okay, so is it not a meta philosophy? Then, if this is the case, then we have to find out we have to make two groups: Wittgenstein, Strawson, Tarski, Davidson in one group, and the Heidegger, Derrida, and the continental philosophers in another group. Now, the first group of philosophers, they will try to find out the logicality of our expression. That is one thing. But when we are coming to the continental philosophers, what we find is known as intertextuality. That means text about the text. That means this is this is also practiced in our Indian thought. What we say, Purvapak, Khandan, and then Uttarpak, then Siddhant. This process is about the text and challenging the text, because what philosophy is, we learn philosophy in a historical setup, historically. So we just see our preceding versions, what we are going to utter, and then we try to modify it, we try to criticize it. This is the task of the philosophers, the analytic way. But if we accept it in that way, then this intertextuality, a text about another text, will become a second order philosophy, the philosophy of philosophy. So I think Dr. Sukla should give emphasis on this aspect of the things, meta philosophy. And so far as the practice is concerned, the task of philosophy is concerned, I think we should accept Russell's version when he says that the only way to find out what philosophy is to do philosophy. So the clues were taken by Strawson and the Wittgenstein from Russell. But this is how the philosophical speculation goes on. Thank you. This is my observation.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ghosh, for your observations, and rightly so. And well, one thing I would like to say, I don't know whether I'm adding to what Professor Pramod Kumar has said when he made a reference to, well, even Prashant Sukla, he talked about the descriptive sciences or the social sciences. Well, the methodology that we use in philosophy is not that we make in sciences or social sciences when they are descriptive. But still, philosophy has to enter them with an evaluative sense. What I feel is philosophy has an evaluative role. Okay, we are not making a description, but still we are evaluating those descriptions so that the descriptions can be polished up to get better. This is an addition. I don't know whether I'm adding up, because that evaluative role philosophy has to play. Otherwise, philosophy, I feel, it has no role that it can play in sciences. So how do you take this? Am I right in saying that philosophy has an evaluative role, and with that role, it has to enter the descriptive sciences? How do you say this?
Yes, I agree, sir. I agree with this evaluative role of a philosophy or the philosophy language. But one thing is that in the process of evaluation, you should have an intention to explain something. Otherwise, suppose something is written in a very poor language, and you are writing that in a very better language, sophisticated language. That type of evaluation is not philosophy. That appreciation of any description, it's not philosophy. In philosophy, a philosopher or the author of an article, he should have an intention. What he is intending to speak. That is very much important. So you can take the help of any science, any discipline, but your intention is to establish something, to prove something, to disprove something, to explain something. If this purpose is not there, then mere evaluation is only a what we shall say literary exercise. That will become a literary exercise. So
No.
philosophy means you have to explain your problem. There must be a problem, and you have to address that problem. Otherwise, philosophical exercise is not understood. I think that.
When I say philosophy has an evaluative role, what I mean to say, it has a reflective sense. It has a dialectical content in it. Because when you take a particular science, it is confined to a particular standpoint. As you even pointed out, that taking Anekantavada of Jainism, we are not restricting a particular point is a particular science. But philosophy has a holistic vision. It has a reflection. It has a dialectic content. It has a dialectic methodology. It even takes metaphysics into issue. So, as Professor Sukla was pointing out, when we are talking about justice, we should be very much precise about what justice is. Okay, unless and until that has been not understood, we are not doing real philosophy. So, my submission is, when I say philosophy has an evaluative role, what I mean to see is the understanding of the basic concepts, and being so much reflective, having a dialectic methodology, as you even spoke of. Okay, taking the pros and the cons, and then making an evaluation over what the descriptive sciences are doing and what they are asserting. So that's how philosophy gives a path. Okay, philosophy makes a path for the descriptive sciences to operate. So what I mean to say is, see, philosophy is just showing the path. Okay, philosophy in evaluating, I'm not saying just putting the point what descriptions are made. No, philosophy is, through this evaluation, it is reflecting through the dialectic method, you say the logical method. Okay, now doing that, philosophy is showing the path for the scientists, maybe, or the social scientists, or any empirical researchers. So philosophy has a role. When I say it is evaluative, I mean it has a reflective role, it has a dialectical methodology to show the path for the sciences to operate, for the social scientists to operate. This is what I mean.
Yes, but I just differ from it, that nobody's evaluation is final. Okay, suppose you evaluate in one way, my evaluation of the same thing may be different. What I mean to say, what is the job of a philosopher and what should be the language of philosophy, that we should have an intention, we should have a problem, and we have to address that problem in a particular context, and we shall give a justification of our problem, of our claim. If it is not there, mere criticism, suppose I shall criticize somebody's philosophy, it is not evaluation. I may speak a better philosophy than another philosopher. So that is a philosophy and this is a philosophy. Here there is no comparison, there is no competition. The point is that what I intend to say and whether my contention is justified or not. If I just speak about others' content and I criticize that without having any intention to find out any conclusion, then this is argumentative rather than evaluative. That should not be. So, in evaluation is a very good thing that we should our philosophization when we are philosophizing, that should be evaluative by nature. But that is not enough. We should have a problem in philosophy, and that is called research work. We should have a problem, and we can address that problem according to my justification. You may evaluate it as wrong, but what I have said, I have justified it from one perspective. So how can one philosopher evaluate the perspective of another philosopher? Rather, we should admit that he is correct from his perspective, from his own perspective. So, actually, Dr. Rao, evaluation is good, but philosophy is much better than that. Philosophy is wider than that, I think. Do you agree or not?
No. Well, what I mean to say is when I say philosophy is evaluative, I say the methodology that it uses, the methodology that you have suggested, the logical methodology. I say the methodology is dialectic. Okay, so it is evaluated from taking both the stands. Okay, the descriptions are there, the descriptions have come out. Okay, so when I say it is dialectical, so philosopher is trying to see what the descriptions are by seeing both the pros and the cons, and then finding a path so that the descriptions can be better be furnished. What I mean, that's the path. That's the path philosophy has got to do. Okay, that's how science also progresses. So that's how philosophy finds a part to play in the descriptive sciences. Otherwise, philosophy will not see. The methodology is your methodology. I'm saying the logical methodology. I say the dialectical methodology. I'm finding the pros and the cons and finding the way through so that the sciences can operate better. So this is my understanding.
Yes, from that where you ended, I am just adding one sentence. The best evaluation of yours is not the conclusion in philosophy. I just mean to say that you evaluated by something by your own attempt. That's good. But you should not close your door. That is still open for discussion.
Okay, that is always there.
That is all. Yes.
If evaluation is final, that would be the end of philosophy. That would be the end of the world.
Yes.
It would be the end of all knowledge altogether. So evaluation that goes, and the process keeps on going on, and there is no end to it. There is no there is no finality in science, nor there is any finality in philosophy. Okay, but the methodology, what I see is a dialectical methodology that would help the descriptive sciences to progress.
Very good. Yes.
This is my
Yes. I agree.
Dr. Sukla, I do want to say something on this. Dr. Sukla.
Yeah, I just want to add something. Of course, I agree with what Professor Rao has said. I absolutely agree with that. That philosophy has to be taken as an evaluative discipline, and the classic example would go like that. Socrates, in none of his dialogues, would say that be just or be courageous or be honest in your deeds. But then he searches for an evaluative definition of what the term justice or courage actually mean. Because he believed that since we are an evaluative discipline, so the first task is to make the people understand what the term justice actually means. Because if we will have a clearer understanding of what justice actually refers to, there are fair enough chances that it will lead to the development of a just society. Now, of course, he cannot at any point of time say that be just, be honest, or be courageous. The moment he will say that, it will come in the first order domain. What he can say at the best is that let's develop a proper understanding of justice honesty, or courage, because that is the task of philosophy. Now, whether you become just later on or not, it's a contingent issue. But then, after doing evaluative interpretation, as in philosophy, there are fair enough chances that the second order understanding can be imposed in the first order domain as well. If it can be done, the task of a philosopher should be considered to be successful. So that is my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, we have with us Dr. Aniruma. Well, she is a regular participant since last few weeks. Well, Dr. Aniruma, do you want to say something on this? Well, your questions are really
Yeah.
She's there. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening. It's always a pleasure and a great satisfaction hearing to Dr. Prashant Shukla, and definitely to Professor Pramod Dash, so clarity in expressions. So when I was hearing Prashanti, I was thinking that philosophy is starting with a meta study. It is starting with a meta study. I mean, as you place it, like just now, Professor Runjit Ghosh was saying, the term he was using as a meta philosophy, I will rather say it is a meta study. So to do philosophy, it is necessary to do a meta study. So you cannot start with a philosophy until you do a meta study. Now, if this is the basic premise, to do a meta study, you need a meta study. Does it go to infinity? I mean, how do you start? Where do you start exactly? If you continuously go on understanding things, then you go towards infinity. You cannot start at all. So you go on just understanding what you're going to tell. So you are doing a meta study. And again, meta of that. So how do you start it? Please.
A wonderful question. And then I must mention here that there has been an issue in the postmodern philosophy which claims that apart from having a first order inquiry and a second order inquiry, there is also supposed to be a third order inquiry. This is the claim which is given by postmodern thinkers, but then the analytical philosophers have already presumed and answered this question by saying that after the first order domain, no matter how much inquiry you make about a statement or about a statement, each and everything will come under the second order inquiry. Let me cite an example here. You buy a car. Later on, once you decide to sell your car, now whether it goes to the second party or the third party or the n number of car party, it will still be called as a second-hand vehicle. It will never become a third hand, fourth hand, or n number of hands of vehicle. In the same fashion, once there is a person to object contact on the empirical or mathematical basis, that will be a first order inquiry. And once we talk about the statements, the first order statements, that will be always a second order inquiry, no matter how n number of about you add to the statement. So Anurimaji, that is my understanding.
Okay, actually, I was trying to understand only philosophy. So does philosophy start with a second order? It starts with a second order. You want to say that, isn't
absolutely,
it?
Yes.
So if it starts with second order, can it at all start with? This was the question. Yeah. Can it at all start with? If it starts with a second order, and if the intention is to understand, I mean, why does it start with a second order? I have to understand why does it at all start with a second order? Because it needs to understand the concept. Now, if you want to understand the concept, you need to understand the understanding of a concept. Okay, so this thing should be going on. So you won't be able to start doing philosophy at all. Okay.
Once we start doing philosophy of religion,
Prashant, you see what Arunima is trying to say is this, that if we try to enter into that domain, then we will be doing second order activity. That means philosophy as a second order activity, and again we are working on it, means again we are making another second order activity under this. This is what probably is mentioning. How would you react to this?
Professor Ghosh, that was the exact answer which I intended to give, that whether you make about a statement, your evaluative judgment is, or about a statement, it will never become third or fourth order inquiry. It will always remain second order inquiry, because the first order sense object contact has already been done by other discipline. Let us say we talk about philosophy of religion. So once religion has developed a considerable corpus or body of terms, then the religious terms would be conceptually analyzed by a philosopher, and that's why we call it the philosophy of religion and not religion per se. I hope I'm making sense to you.
Sir, it is not a concern like whether it will be called second or third or fourth. I accept that it will all be called second, fine. But can we at all start? Can we at all start somewhere? This is a concern.
Yes, of course. The moment we say philosophy of something, even language or science or religion or mind or subaltern morality, before the conceptual analysis starts, that particular content should have a considerable corpus or body of terms already evolved. If it is not there, I believe, and Russell would say that in the first half, not in his later unpopular lectures, in his first half, he would say, we would make conceptual analysis of the terms only and if the term has already been established and accepted by the society.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, if I'm right and if I'm taking things right, so concept as it is, okay, and then thinking on that concept, so two different things. So concept as it is given. So concept as it is, well, it will be treated as a first order activity, and thinking on that concept and analysis of the concept is philosophy. Do you agree with that? Yes. Okay. So, well, we have a question by Shravani Mishra Madam. She says, well, Professor Pramod Kumar Das sir has called for the logical method, and she has a question in mind whether this logical method, okay, that philosophy has, which Professor Das has pointed out during his lecture on, say, language of philosophy, whether this logical method be applied to both the phenomenal world and the world beyond. So this is the question by Shravani Madam.
Yes. So just I shall answer this question. Just I shall add one thing what was discussed before regarding the first order and second order activity of philosophy. So the first order activity is always descriptive by nature. The second order activity is always implicative or explanatory or logical by nature. This is the difference between first order and second order. As Anurima Madam said and Dr. Ranjit Ghosh clarified that the second order of second order, and there will be go in this process. No, when the second order is discussed descriptively, it can be also discussed in as the second order. That means whenever we are having a first order that is descriptive by nature, that may be any discipline, that may be about science, maybe about arts, commerce, anything, whatever. And Dr. Rao also very beautifully said that the concept as such means it is descriptive. What is given to you, what is described. And if you are evaluating that, if you are adding something, if you are analyzing that, you are applying logic to that, then it becomes the second order activity. But the point is that you must have an honest intention when you are evaluating or criticizing or taking it in the second order activity. Otherwise, this effort is useless. It is not the argument for the sake of the argument. And the second thing is what Sravani Madam is asking the question about the logic of the metaphysics. Whether when we are discussing about logic, can we explain both phenomena and noumena, or the appearance and the truth? Many philosophers, they like Immanuel Kant, they are rejecting this view that so far as the logic is concerned, that is phenomenal, that is human, that can be understood by human beings, because the logic that a man understands, that is not understood by animals, and the person who does not know the rules of logic, he can't understand the logic. But the point is, many philosophers, they also speak that there is logic of metaphysics. There is logic of metaphysics, but Immanuel Kant is rejecting that, because critical philosophers, they think that whatever is through a format, that cannot describe the totality. So the point is that our realization of metaphysics is something different, which may not be expressed in language, but the truth is there. Therefore, whatever we realize, that may not be expressed in logic or language, because logic also obeys the binary principle. Suppose we say law of identity, that means A is A is A, or P or not P. A and A are contradictory to each other. So here also we take binary concepts. Logic can't be done without this binary application. But those who have realized truth, they have transcended the binary concepts or any dialectical approaches, and they have the realization of the unity, the complete synthesis. That cannot be expressed in any form of language. This is my contention. So metaphysical truth can be realized. Metaphysical truth cannot be expressed through language and logic. It is accepted by both Western philosophers and Indian philosophers. In Western land, I took the help of Immanuel Kant. In Indian culture, I took the name of Sankaracharya and many others. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So
sir.
you mean to say that the language of philosophy actually helps us transcending the binaries which we come across in the use of language?
No, sir. No.
And then what?
Just the opposite. Language of a philosophy must be confined to the binary, because it can't transcend, because without that binary limitation, language cannot operate.
Yeah.
So language is bound to follow the binary application. Even our thought, even our logic. The point is that is not the truth. Truth is something which is beyond the binary applications. This is not only accepted by Indian philosophers, this is also accepted by Western philosophers like Immanuel Kant. So we should know our format. Logic is our format. Language is our format. Who are we to assess the truth? Truth is so vast. Western philosophers, those who are critical philosophers, those who focus on the linguistic analysis, very sorry to say, there are some philosophers are claiming that if you analyze language from this corner and that corner, that is the entire philosophy. Beyond the language, the scheme of language, no discussion is useless. No, that is not philosophy, that is a part of philosophy. Philosophy means what you realize, that is mixed in the language. Philosophy means what you think, that is matching with logic. and philosophy is what you are speaking or writing. So philosophy is very wider. We should not confine philosophy only with the linguistic expression. Philosophical problems cannot be solved by any linguistic expression. When Wittgenstein said that metaphysical problems arise, metaphysical problems take place when the language goes on holiday, this is misinterpreted. I don't think why it is misinterpreted. What Wittgenstein intends to say is that there are different disciplines. And also James is speaking about the varieties of human experience, that man has varieties of human experience. So there are different experiences, there are different disciplines. Every discipline has its own language. So you should know the use of language of a particular discipline. Don't make the category mistake. When you are discussing about science, don't discuss that with the language of religion. When we are discussing about religion, don't discuss that with the language of science. Every game has its own rule. This is the language goes on holiday means language is not interpreted by its own proper role. That is its role in a particular discipline. So we should be very much comfortable. Suppose I am a scientist. I am using scientific language in my laboratory, but I have my personal life. I have visited the temple with my family. So there I can pray. So here language differs. There I should not use the scientific language. There I should say tat ejati, tat na ejati, tat dure, tat antike. You are here and you are everywhere, you are moving and you are not moving. This appears to be contradictory, but these are not contradictory in the religious domain. So the function of language, religious language, is very much relevant in that experience. Those who don't have a religious experience, they can't understand that language. Chakaki sabu dekhuchi. It is meaningless. It is not meaningless. It is meaningful in the religious domain. Jagannath means Jagadarnath. He is the Natha of the entire world. But what with general Jagannath means he is in Puri. Puri Jagannath is the Jagannath. Now Jagannath means the Natha, he is the Lord of the entire Jagat. Isavasyam idam sarvam. So this type of expression can be understood by those persons who have that realization. By simply being engaged in linguistic analysis, we can't have that realization of truths.
You are right. The Wittgenstein is suggesting different methodologies. So also William James is suggesting varieties of religious experience. So they believe in these things, that these things will be definitely there. We cannot just overrule them. This was the view of both Wittgenstein and William James. Thank you.
William James, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Das. Well, two things I wish to say here. That to what Professor Das has said, that what I could conclude from the entire discussion that followed, that both logic and language, very skillful. They are very good tools, and they do take mankind to very great heights, but still they have to face a dead end. They have to face a dead end, and there they fail. So that speak of the limitation of both language and logic. But still philosophy operates. How philosophy operates? Philosophy operates through the realization, which language cannot do, which logic cannot do. So this is one thing that I have to finally conclude.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
That is what the last line of Tractatus, whereof you cannot say, thereof you must remain silent.
Yes, sir.
We have to
Yes.
emphasis on that.
Yes. Very nice. Oh, beautiful. That means silence is also a highest order of language. Language
Yes,
does not
yes.
language does not mean that it should be only verbal. It should be
Silence
only
speaks. It is
silence
silence that
speaks.
speaks.
Silence speaks.
Yeah.
You can't explain a mother why do you love your child. It is indescribable because mother has her own realization. We can't express it. Many things are there which can't express in language. In our practical experience, we manage to express some feelings in the language. We can't express. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ranjit sir. Ranjit sir, thank you.
One thing,
Pramod sir,
one
Pramod
thing I
sir.
say,
Okay, Pramod sir.
हाँ कौन
Hello,
तो
Pramod sir. If you are accepting that silence is the highest language, then why do you deny that language fails in understanding the metaphysical truths? Hello.
No, language means that we are talking about that language which is developed by human convention. That language which is created by human beings. We have created words, we have given meaning to them, and these are accepted by the society. We have a common agreement that which word means what. Then we have a linguistic communication. Through that, you can't accommodate the metaphysics. When we are talking about silence, that is transcendence. Silence means transcendence.
language
Well,
of
means-
silence is the language of realization.
Yes, very nice. Yes, that is transcendence.
Okay, it is the language of realization. So
Sir, you belong, sir, Kailash sir is a devotee of Sri Aurobindo, Sri Ma and Sri Aurobindo. For you, I am telling one thing from Sri Aurobindo. When I am becoming emotional to say this, your language will be changed when your level of consciousness will be changed. When a great philosopher speaks a word, it is so much condensed with the truth that a common man can't speak. So if you are in the higher mind, your language is something. If you are in the intuitive mind, your language is something. Therefore, what is supermind? Supermind means the truth consciousness. That means in every state of mind, there is an attempt to know the truth. But the real truth is known in supermind. That means what happens in the lower minds? In the lower minds, there is a shadow. There is a limitation. So your language speaks about your realization. Suppose you speak.
We can say that language diversifies, but silence
Yes.
unifies. That
Unify. Thank you, sir. Ranjit sir is saying today very wonderfully. Thank you, sir.
thank you, Professor Das, Professor Dr. Ranjit Ghosh sir, for the observations. Now, one more thing that comes to my mind to the position that Dr. Sukla took relating to the second order, third order activity. Okay, I don't think there is no need of third order, fourth order activity. My understanding goes something like this: if concept as it is taken, the concept is taken as a first order activity, and philosophy as a second order activity, it makes an analysis, it makes a reflection, or it makes an evaluation of that very concept, and in the process we call philosophy as a second order activity. Now, by the operation of this second order activity, the concept takes a new shape. The concept, there is a refinement in the concept. Not that the concept doesn't go and change. There is a refinement in the concept, a refinement in the understanding of the concept, so that the concept takes a new shape. Now, this concept, which takes a new shape, becomes a first order activity again. It is not that it is going to any other activity. This concept again, the new concept in the new shape, again becomes a first order activity for philosophy to operate.
Yes, sir.
The second order activity, and not that there is a third, fourth, fifth order activity. So the concept taking a new shape, becomes a first order activity for philosophy to operate on. And that's how philosophy always remains a second order activity. This is my submission. Thank you.
Therefore, there is no end in philosophy. Your last conclusion can be taken as the first order. Still there is a second order activity, means still there is a possibility of a thinking. So it goes on. If you close your door at one conclusion, then this is dogmatic. So philosophy is anti-dogmatic. Anti-dogmatism means the door is always open for revision, for rediscussion, for correction.
Philosophy is a process and not a
It is a
product.
process. It is a process.
And not a
It
product.
is a process. Don't conclude anywhere that this is the contribution of a Jaina philosophy. I like Jaina philosophy, and that is the only system which speaks this in both Indian and Western cultures. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, both the speakers, the question raisers, and everybody. Now over to Dr. Kailas Mana sir to propose a formal vote of thanks. So I thank everybody, Dr. Ghosh, Dr. Anurima, and everybody who took part, and even Dr. Sravani Mishra madam. Now to Dr. Kailas Mana sir for proposing a formal vote of thanks.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dr. Rao, for the beautiful moderation and for putting your own observation on both the speakers. So today, we are lucky and we are very fortunate that we have got the two speakers in the two speakers, Professor Shukla and Professor Pramod Kumar, and we have seen the harmony of thoughts in both the speakers. Both the speakers have spoken on the logic of language, the language of philosophy and philosophy of language, and starting from the second order activity that philosophy aims at, Professor Das has also very beautifully said how philosophy of language helps us to know what is beyond language. So philosophy of language also helps us to have the second order activity and to understand the philosophical analysis through language, and also what is beyond language. And very beautifully he has also concluded it. And I have no words how to offer my vote of thanks to both the speakers. Before proposing vote of thanks to both the speakers, I bow down before Professor Ranjit Ghosh for his observation, for his beautiful observation, both the speakers, and he has tried to solve the ambiguities and the questions raised by different viewers today. And I also thank Madam Sravani and Madam Arunima for their questions, for the beautiful observation and beautiful questions. And Professor Das and Professor Shukla have tried to resolve all the questions, and they have put their observation, put their reflection, philosophy reflection on both the questions. And we are really fortunate to have both the speakers on this platform. Professor Pramod Kumar has made it possible by inviting Dr. Prashant Kumar Shukla, and I can see how it happens. Both the speakers are at different places, but today we can see the harmony of thought, harmony of philosophical reflection in both the speakers. So I must propose a vote of thanks. I am very fortunate to have my gratitude to both the speakers, and I have my gratitude to all the peers, to all the learned viewers to be with us in the Sunday webinar. I must extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Dr. K. Rao for his moderation, for his analysis, and for having a connectivity in answering all the questions. I must also thank Madam Sonnalata for hosting the session. And with this, I offer my gratitude to all the peers connected with the Sunday webinar. And over to Madam Sonnalata to wind up the session.
Oh, thankful to even Dr. Anurima and Sravani madam, and also I thank you for coordinating this session and raising a beautiful question. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. I thank everybody.
Yes, now the meeting is declared closed. We are grateful to all of you. Thank you.